So the core point I want to make here is self-criticism doesn't actually produce accountability. It doesn't actually produce sustainable fuel to create the life that you want. It just makes you more defensive. My name is Ege. I'm the founder of Data Driven Actualization, where we help analytical men optimize their minds so they don't just have a good life on paper, but they also feel great, confident, and at peace while performing at a high level. This is a behind-the-scenes clip from our Data Driven Actualization mastermind, where we work on exactly that. I hope you enjoy. But I want to start with a quick story. Now, this story will sound like it has nothing to do with inner work at the beginning. However, it's a good way to illustrate the power of having a strong, loving, unconditionally loving witness. So I think it was around January or February of this year, if not earlier, I actually thought of doing this cohort. And the setup that I have going on now, where there's a camera, there's a presentation, I found the guy who actually sold a product for around $300 who would help me get this set up on my computer so I could deliver this to you guys. So I messaged Numer on our Slack. I said, Numer, this looks really cool. Can you kind of recreate it so we can see if this guy's, built something significant, or he's just a guy who knows a little bit of software and then is targeting that to marketers, and it's actually something we can build on our own. But eventually I tried a little bit of the setup and I decided to buy his product, except when I bought his product and set everything up, even though the course that he created was absolutely amazing, really structured, great template, looked good, my laptop was just too old. So every time I tried to run this, it would just freeze up. And I saw the potential of the type of content I could create for you guys, the type of presentations I could give, having a setup like this, where I can do this, just go back and forth and make it very seamless. And I was pretty frustrated because here I was in front of my laptop thinking to myself, I have this great software, this great course, it's all ready, but my laptop is just too old. So eventually, I went to the US to see my dad, and I ended up getting a fully new tech setup, mainly to be able to run this course as well as improve our content overall. So even though I had the perfect software, the perfect tools, and the perfect step-by-step plan, because the hardware of my laptop wasn't good enough, I couldn't get the outcome that I wanted. And I think that applies to life in general. So if we look at life, right, you can consider your software to be any strategy that you're following. It can be a course that you have. It can be even a mentor, a therapist, a coach that you're working with. And right now, one of the most popular things is it can also be an AI tool, right? But your hardware is how you speak to yourself, the relationship that you have with yourself, and how safe you feel in your own company. So what happens is, if that relationship is not very solid, you can have the most powerful software, just like I did with this course that I bought, but it's not going to work because the narrative is going to give you this invisible wall where you're not going to be able to push through. So today is about upgrading your hardware, because without that, no matter what tools you have, what strategy you have, what books you're reading, even what mentors you're working with, it's going to feel like an uphill battle. Does that make sense? All good on that front? All right, cool. So as I was doing research for this, I wanted to dive a little bit into the science, and I found some really interesting studies that shows the power of the unconditional loving witness. So in 2010, scientists studied around 308,800, wait, I can't read, 308,849 people, that's just a lot of people, across 148 research projects. And they had one question. They wanted to know what actually determines how long you live. Does anyone have a guess? Just unmute yourself and throw in a guess or drop it in the chat. I'm curious what you guys think the answer is. Community, quality relationships, low stress. All right. Good guesses. Life satisfaction, positive mindset. I guess the topic of our presentation is a little bit telling. Good attitude. Zohair said, let's see, fulfillment. Nis said, Amar said relationships. All right. You guys are pretty much on the money. The answer was surprising to most people because they would have thought, it's exercise, it's diet, maybe it's genetics, if people had more of a fixed mindset. But the single biggest predictor of how long you live turned out to be the quality of your relationships. And here's the crazy part. People with weak social connections were dying earlier at the same rate as people who smoked 15 cigarettes a day. That's not 15 cigarettes a week. That's 15 cigarettes a day. That's a PR even for a Turkish person. That's a lot of cigarettes. Now, when it comes to smoking, we have entire public health campaigns around it, right? You have warning labels, you sometimes have pictures on the boxes that show a lung that's just looking pretty bad. There's cultural stigma, and we know at this point, even though we may not have known years ago, smoking kills. But nobody talks about loneliness the same way, because the body doesn't actually care what's popular, it just responds to what's happening in our environment, right? And what's interesting is, even though we can look at other people and the relationships we have with them, it's a little bit more challenging to do research into, well, how does our own relationship to us apply here? What difference does that make? And there's actually someone named Gilbert, who is the founder of compassion-focused therapy, who looked into this. And what he found was when you criticize yourself harshly, the body reacts the same way it would if someone was physically threatening you. So your heart rate would go up, your stress hormones would be spiking, your immune system would be on high alert. So to your body, there was no difference between a threat externally, almost like a lion chasing you, or a cruel voice inside that said, that's not good enough. How could you do that? You just messed up. Now, the one that surprised me the most, that I found the most interesting, and this is the last study around this. Scientists gave couples small wounds, and then, I'm not sure how they did that. That sounds a little bit dodgy, but I'll take it. And then they watched how fast the couple healed. Couples who were warm and kind to each other healed 40% faster than couples who were hostile and critical. That's crazy, right? Just the way someone treats you changes how fast you heal, at least in this study. So the quality of their relationship changed how fast the body repaired itself. And if we're to take that logic, here's an important question. If how two people treat each other changes how fast the body heals, what does 5, 10, 20 years of inner hostility doing to us, doing to you, doing to people around us, right? This is why I think this is the most meaningful thing that I can do with my life and help people with. Because a loving relationship with yourself isn't just a nice to have. It's a core factor in living a good life that we haven't been taught how to work with deliberately. Now, a funny question people have when we bring up self-love, and I don't think many of you guys have this question because you're already in this program, but maybe you have a slight sliver of doubt. That question is, well, if I love myself too much, what would motivate me to actually achieve my goals? I could just, sit on the couch, feel really good, eat some pizza, maybe I wouldn't do anything, right? So I wanted to take some time to address that. And what I found was actually the research shows the opposite. In 2012, they had a study at UC Berkeley, and what they found is people who have more self-compassion, when they fail, they spend more time trying again. They just get back to work. And actually, self-critical people are more likely to withdraw from the task that they failed at because they get stuck in the shame and guilt cycle. So that means self-compassion doesn't make you weaker, it actually makes you more resilient. And in another study at Duke in 2007, they also found that people with more self-compassion were able to be more honest about their own role in what went wrong. So what that means is if there's a situation and I didn't get what I wanted, I can take more responsibility for it because my identity or my worth isn't on the line. So I can look at a situation and say, I could have done better there, but I don't feel threatened. So as a result, people who are self-compassionate have more agency to create the life that they want. So self-compassion doesn't just make us more resilient, it also makes us more powerful because our locus of control increases because we perceive to have more control over our lives versus someone who's self-critical withdraws from tasks that he feels like he's not good enough in because that becomes a challenge to his identity. So the core point I want to make here is self-criticism doesn't actually produce accountability. It doesn't actually produce sustainable fuel to create the life that you want. It just makes you more defensive. And self-compassion doesn't make you complacent, doesn't make you lazy. It makes you more capable. This was a clip from our year-long Data Driven Actualization Mastermind for Analytical Men. If you resonate with it and you'd like to know how the transformation would look like for your life, you don't have to commit to a year. You can start with a 30-day U 2.0 accelerator as a risk-free test drive. You get the same system, the same modules, the same coaching, the same actualized OS tracking software. And the way we've designed it is if you just take the actions that would help you get results, you get to earn your investment back, which means I need to also filter you as a person to make sure you're not going to take advantage of this, right? So if you're interested, the next step is go to the link in description and book a planning call so I can understand exactly where you're at, what your goals are, what you're struggling with, and tell you if this would be helpful for you. And then only from there, you decide after you work with us in a risk-free way, whether you want to stay for a year. If this system, this message, these goals resonate with you, click the link below and book a call and we'll speak from there.